All right, what's going on, guys? We are now live. I am here hosting one of my close family friends, Dr. Supida, as I may call her, Jenny Monaikul. Just to give a quick background on who she is and what she's done up to this point, she has her bachelor's in psychology, and she had a focus in biological psychology. She has received her Ph.D. from University of Illinois in toxicology and neuroscience, and her postdoc work is in nutrition and neuroscience. Some of her research right now is focused on brain development and how different exposures can have a positive or negative effect on the brain, ranging anywhere from environmental to nutrition. And I just want to apologize if like the video quality is kind of bad right now because the Wi-Fi connection isn't the greatest. So if it is bad, just let me know in like the little chat thing on the side. But just some background, like how I know her. I've known her since I was like 6 years old. My dad actually knew her family, and then we started going to their family restaurant. And since then, we just kind of grown up together. She's given me a lot of like life advice, helped me a lot in school, and I just go to her now to just learn and continue to grow from, and just yeah, get some great insight on things. So, did you want to add anything about
No,
yourself?
that
Okay.
was probably more of an introduction than I deserved.
Okay. So yeah, I want to start off. So the whole point of this doing this Q&A was to address something that I've been asked about before in past Q&As, and it's CNS training. And I never really understood what CNS training was or like where it came from. So I kind of did some research into that, did my own kind of little take on it, but Jenny here is going to give probably a much better interpretation of some of the questions that I was asked, and just give some of her, again, just like her take and background on some of the stuff she studied and is researching now. So basically my understanding of what it is and where it came from, I did some research into, or I did some research into some different studies and read some different articles on kind of what it was. And most of the articles just talked about how CNS training is based from basically overloading and doing low repetition exercises, and basically trying to train power over endurance. So that's kind of like the first point that I looked into. And yeah, would you want to kind of give your take on what that means, or like what they might be talking about when they say, you know, overload or doing low repetition over high rep?
So first start by saying that I am not a kinesiologist. So I am a neuroscientist and toxicologist by training. So when it comes to a lot of things peripheral, specifically muscle endurance and so on and so forth, that is not my area of expertise. But I do know, and I will offer my opinions on that. So the first thing that you mentioned was CNS training in general. I do think that that term has been used now to encompass a really broad range of what exercise really is.
Right.
And there have been a lot of studies that have shown the beneficial effects of exercise, especially on neuron birth and generation in the brain, and
telomere length
is very important, yeah, and preventing the shortening of telomere length, but also in synaptic plasticity, so helping your brain become more plastic and more adaptable. A lot of research has been done on that. Now, the term CNS training in general, I do think has come to encompass any sort of exercise from what I've read thus far. And there are a couple of different aspects to that I've noticed people kind of turn to. So there is a difference between just training your muscles to get used to the load that you're bearing or the movement that you're doing, and training in general, just training your mind to be motivated to be able to exert that force comfortably, and to sort of just build your own sense of accomplishment and perception in the amount of force you're exerting and the amount of effort that you're putting into the movement.
Right. So something we're going to get into in a little bit too is like mirror neurons, and that kind of goes off of what you were just talking about in terms of just like the more of like the visualization side of things. but also in the article I was reading, it talked about how if your body had to choose between adapting to one type of training, it would rather train to, or rather adapt to endurance rather than power.
Right.
So.
And I think that is that's sort of a default mode. Because if your brain and your body thinks it is going to have to do something to sustain a motion or sustain a movement for a period of time, it's going to opt to do the minimal amount of work that will allow for the longest length of exertion.
Okay. So by overloading and doing low repetitions, you're basically going against that whole.
Right. And that could be good or bad. I don't know that there's a ton of research on that, but it could be good or bad. You could be training your body to do your mind and your body to do something that it's not used to doing.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you overload enough that your brain in power mode. It just means that you are training something that is not the default for the brain and the body to do.
Okay. So, and also in the article, it was talking about how your body would go towards efficiency over proficiency. So is that kind of the same thing as training endurance?
Yeah, so that's the same thing. I mean, it's going to go sort of like energy saving mode. So it is doing the motion that is most efficient that will allow you to do the motion, but that will allow you to sustain the motion, versus using maximal force and maximal power and having sort of a burst, because those bursts aren't realistically adaptive or sustainable over a long period of time.
So you're just training for like one specific, like you said, one burst, so like one movement rather than like running 10 miles.
Right. So if you know that you're going to need to sustain any activity for a long period of time, your body is going to revert, and that could be your brain telling your body, hey, you got a marathon to run, so we're going to conserve muscle energy in this way to
like we
stave
might not
off fatigue as long as we can. I mean, that's
like we might not move as fast or like run as many sprints. We're just gonna pace.
Exactly.
Okay. So another aspect of that article talked about was mirror neurons, and how actually like visualizing something and like thinking you're practicing it can actually improve it over some period of time. And I thought that was really interesting and like almost like unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that, if you want to talk about that, like how.
It's not unbelievable. Mirror neurons are a pretty cool thing. They've been studied a lot. There haven't been a ton of studies that have looked definitively at human mirror neurons.
Okay.
Especially because there's really no way of looking at that. You can't actually study neuron by neuron in a human brain. So a lot of the work has been done in primates specifically, as well as other animals. But it's not conclusive that humans have mirror neurons. It's not 100% conclusive, but there are studies that suggested, specifically fMRI studies and ECG studies, that can show activation of neural patterns that are that tend to fire when somebody's watching an action or something. But the mirror neurons do exist, and they do respond to action, whether it's being observed or actually being done. And they're adaptive. I mean, they're good because there are several different roles that they can play. You can imitate, you can facilitate learning of an action or movement. You can potentially read intentions. So if you're watching, let's say a monkey is watching another monkey, the mirror neurons will activate as it is learning and figuring out what that other monkey is doing. And that could be adaptive. It could be a read between this thing's about to attack me versus.
So to correlate this to jumping or basketball, actually one of the TED videos I watched recently, actually the study they looked at was about, they took two groups, and one of them actually did shot free throws actively over a period of time, and then the other one just visualized it, and they found that both groups actually improved over the same amount of time. So,
but were they at the same level in the end, or did the ones that actually physically did do the task?
If I remember, I think the ones that physically did it improved. That just the fact that they both improved was the interesting part.
By sheer watching or visualizing a movement, that would improve performance.
So I'm sure some of you guys out there who are either, working out or training to jump or training to dunk, like, I'm sure there's times where you guys might be sitting there just like thinking, I hope one day I could jump this high, or, just visualizing dunking, visualizing, getting a heavy weight up or something. I feel like it's good to rehearse that and just, practice it mentally before you actually go into it. So that way, it's almost like when you go into it, you've already done it. Yeah. So it's that much easier.
I mean, and if you think about it too, let's say you're a basketball coach, or you're playing basketball and you're visualizing a play or a screen that could potentially work. I mean, that in and of itself is activating neurons in your brain. It is stimulating different areas of your brain in a way that is hopefully creating and consolidating information such that when it does come time to carry it out, that information is relatively readily available because you've kind of rehearsed it in your head.
Right.
That's not to say that a person that is visualizing something is going to do better than a person that's actually done the act.
Right.
That's important.
Now, it almost seems like sometimes this visualization happens like almost subconsciously, like, just at times when you're spacing out, it's like you just start to think through things, like you just said, going through a play. It's almost like before you do it, you just automatically visualize it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that has anything to do with your brain kind of working towards efficiency. Does that like make it easier, maybe like physiologically, for your brain to be like, okay, I've done this in my head, so it's going to be easier when I actually physically do it and have to exert energy? I don't know if that's a stretch.
No, I think that's more an attentional bias.
Okay.
So it is the thoughts that pop in your head. You're not necessarily controlling those thoughts that pop into your head. It's whether or not you choose to pay attention.
Right.
So you're choosing to selectively pay attention to something that you wish to do, and that act is what will help you in the end. I don't know that that's an efficiency thing. I think that's more of paying attention to something that matters, and eventually carrying it out.
Okay. By the way, if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the chat. We will definitely be looking at those and looking to answer those. But I have some questions from the past Q&A I talked about at the beginning. From one of them, from Zan Ning, I recommended that I have Jenny answer that question before I actually answered it on the Q&A, because I knew we were going to have this conversation. And he asked, how do you know your CNS is recovering, and does more sleep help, or does less sleep hurt?
Okay, so after a bout of training, I don't know that it is necessarily your CNS that needs to recover. I mean, your brain doesn't really feel tired from the exercise, right? It is the fatigue in your muscles and your body that the screen turned black. Does that matter?
Oh, hello. Can you guys still see the video right now?
I mean, I could keep talking, but I don't know if
All right,
anybody's seen it.
there we go. Because of the Wi-Fi connection, I almost figured this was going to happen. So we're going to continue this as just like a voice conversation, and I have the recording of the actual, like what we're talking about right now, on a different camera. So we'll just continue it this way since the video went out. But if you guys want to ask any questions, I still have the chat up and everything, so you won't be able to see us, but you'll still be able to hear everything we're saying. So, but I will post an updated version with like clear video, no cuts, basically same thing as you're watching now, after this video, or lack of video. So if you want.
Sorry. So to continue that, the recovery period is more for your muscles after training. What your brain, you need sleep. Your body peripherally and centrally needs sleep. Your brain uses sleep as a period for consolidation. So things, sensory experiences, things that you've learned, so on and so forth. The synapses that may or may not have been strengthened or may have been formed, all of that, all these processes require at least some form of rest. And that may be in the form of consolidation during sleep, memory consolidation, and so on and so forth. So yes, sleep is important. is very important, and lack of sleep will definitely alter your ability to train and perform ultimately in the end. Especially if you're tired, you're going to lack coordination.
Right.
That's all CNS, and it's also muscle fatigue, and your body just hasn't had time to recover. So sleep is very important.
So would you say anything that's like CNS training, CNS recovery, CNS fatigue, like has that been all just correlated to just, like you said at the beginning, specific training more than just actually having to do with central nervous system?
I think part of the not the problem, but part of the reason it's been called that is because your central nervous system plays an inextricable role in all of training. Your brain controls pretty much everything between your brain and your heart, right? I mean, that's what you need to function, I mean, as well as every other system. But I think that the reason CNS fatigue and CNS training and all those things have come to be such a big part of exercise is because people realize that, hey, you need your brain to be able to perform these functions.
Right.
And between, down to your motor cortex communicating with your spinal cord to your muscles, like that is CNS. And so you can just call it fatigue, or you can just call it, but fatigue can be also muscle fatigue versus motivational fatigue, or being unable to transmit that signal efficiently because you're tired, and
so basically they've just drawn it all to like the powerhouse pretty much.
Yeah, it is just kind of, it's categorizing, but they're huge categories.
Right.
Peripheral fatigue versus central fatigue.
Right. All right, I'm going to take a second really quick to see if I can bring this video back for you guys. Like I said, I will be posting, whether this comes back or not, I will be posting like a full, better quality version of this live stream. I'm just going to try really quick to see if I can relaunch it. All right, I'm going to try to relaunch it right now. So if it cuts out, the video should be right back.